writer for Last Week Tonight with John Oliver in the 2010s. The Substack, I Might Be Wrong, here in the 2020s. Folks listening can become one of his more than 30,000 subscribers. We're going to head back to the early 2000s. Dos a Cero. Jeff, did you make a plan to stay up or wake up for the kickoff airing live from South Korea?
Wake up. I didn't trust myself, but it was a plan because I was in Northern Virginia at the time. I had just graduated from college, and so I was staying with my sister who was living in Alexandria, Virginia. And that part of Virginia, if people know it, such a heavy Mexican and Central American population around there that if you walk around, and this has happened to me before, if you walk around, you'll know who won just by the looks on people's faces. I remember one time, not this game, but a different USA-Mexico game in the 2000s. I taped it. I had a comedy show that night, and I drove home from the comedy show, and just seeing people on the street often wearing their Mexico jerseys, looking bummed, I knew what the outcome was. Yeah. So I was going to I taped it and woke up. But I had a plan. I wasn't going to go outside, see anybody do anything before I watched the game. That was going to be the very first thing I did that day.
Can't get on the AOL.com homepage either.
Absolutely not.
A lot of obstacles.
Which was it was the only website back then, but it would have had the score.
Yeah, had to watch out. And okay, so you tape it, wake up in the morning before any news can get to you, before any neighbors can be seen. You mentioned that you'd had that happen before. Was it perhaps another Dos a Cero, the Columbus, Ohio one in World Cup qualifying, USA Mexico?
It might have been, because there were a couple of those Columbus Dos a Ceros.
Yeah,
it might have been one of the futures one, because it was about 2006. Driving down, I was coming back from the Arlington Draft House, if people know that, again in Northern Virginia. Driving down Glebe Road, I could deduce the score just from seeing people and their demeanor.
And there's a little spice added onto this one. Things would get chippy and frustrated a little bit. In qualifying, they had a home and home, and Mexico seemed pretty peeved that for the home game, USA chose Columbus, Ohio in February, and it was 29 degrees Fahrenheit. And they were like, well, that part of it's because they try to freeze us while we're playing.
Sure.
Unfair advantage. But they come in as favorites here. The betting markets had them as minus 175 implied win probability. Of that is 64%. Bush was at just 58% versus Kerry 2 years later. Altry controls all the action in the opening 7 minutes. USA is coming off a loss to Poland. Do you remember feeling any resignation early in this one in the opening minutes?
No. I mean, I don't remember anything really before McBride's goal. To me, you're saying it came in the 7th minute. It felt like it came 30 seconds in. I know it didn't. I know that was Dempsey's goal against Ghana a decade later, but it felt like that goal happened right away. So you're telling me Mexico dominated the early going? I don't remember that part. Certainly I think we won that match because I don't think it even crossed Mexico's mind that they wouldn't win. You're saying 64%. It seemed well north of 100%, at least to Mexico fans. I mean, I'm cheering for the U.S., so I'm holding out hope. But just the history of that soccer rivalry. I mean, it's stupid to even call it a rivalry at that point. I mean, you and I sitting here know that we the U.S. kind of came to dominate the 2000s, and really starting with that Dos a Cero in Columbus that you mentioned, and then Mexico would do better in the 2010s. So now we're going back and forth. Now it's a rivalry. But at that point, it's like, I don't think we beat Mexico in the 80s. I don't think we beat Mexico in the 70s. There was something like, 26-2-2 or something like that against us at that point. And this one really counted. So I think 100% their expectation was they were going to cruise through this match. And it wasn't until that punch in the nose in the 7th minute that everyone suddenly realized, oh, maybe not.
Yeah, up there. First 7 minutes, Mexico controls, and then 8th minute, Claudio Reyna up the side, glides past a slide tackle, hits Josh Wolf.
Not expected to start. Yeah.
Yeah, and then one touch to Brian McBride, 12 yards out, puts it away. So you mentioned the 70s and 80s. Yeah, Mexico would just not lose at all to the USA. USA make some strides in the 90s, beat them in semis, CONCACAF 91. What was your expectations like for the US, having seen the strides they made in the 90s and in the early 2000s?
I would say I had like no expectations for the US because I did become a US soccer fan in the 94 World Cup. I was one of those. I was, in high school at that point. Soccer was the only sport I was good at. That's how I gravitated towards it. I like all the sports, but soccer is the only one that I was worth a damn. Not that I was really any good, but I was better than the others. And watching the US in the 94 World Cup was exciting, and we did okay, and we were the hosts, and it was just a hell of a lot of fun. And I love the concept of the World Cup. Just a global sporting event. It's different than the Olympics, I think, in a better way, because every part of the world can field a good soccer team. Olympics, cross country skiing, Angola is not very, no offense, Angola, but they're not really a cross country skiing superpower. The Olympics is kind of split off by sport. Different parts of the world are interested in the different sports, but soccer, everyone loves it. So it really is a global event. I thought that was so cool, but I knew that we were just learning the sport because I was playing it in Southern Virginia, and it was like a novelty. It was like, nobody knew the rules. It's like, how come they throw it in sometimes and kick it in other times? What's that about? It was so new. I remember those primers during the 94 World Cup that it was like, what's a red card? It was that level of newness. And it was, our team was like a third college kids in 94. So I had very low expectations. In 98, we bombed out. I had no expectations, but a lot of hope because we looked pretty good in qualifying. And, we did beat Mexico. And of course we'd beaten Portugal in the first match in 2002, beat Portugal, tied South Korea, the hosts. That game against Poland to this day is like disappointing. That was a real gut punch because it, beat Poland, tied South Korea. It looked like, all right, we've got something here. And then losing to Poland is like down to earth. So going into the Mexico game, I didn't know what to expect. And yeah, I would say my expectations were very low, but my hopes were high.
Yeah, Poland had already been eliminated and playing just to maybe they're a little loose and we were tight. I don't know.
They were playing for nothing and they beat us 3-1 and it wasn't that close.
And then we get to back in because South Korea, shocking upset of Portugal. Weird year at the World Cup. Portugal and France both go out. I think France is like Zidane was like in an exhibition with Korea when he landed and got injured, missed the first two games. And so just like a lot of odd stuff. And we get South Korea and the United States through that group to the knockout stage. The tent is growing. A lot of people are getting excited, even though it's the middle of the night. Defensive midfielder Pablo Mastriani said that as soon as they got to the location, President George W. Bush called them up and said he placed a bet on them with Mexican President Vicente Fox. And there's also a clip on YouTube.
It's like what he called his bookie. There wasn't legal sports betting back then. Like, probably shouldn't say this, but I got 10 large on you guys.
He did say something like along the lines of like I guess Bruce Arena had him on his speaker phone with the team, and he was like, I think it's on YouTube. He said something like, "There's a lot of people back home like myself who don't know anything about soccer, but we're all rooting for you."
You see, he's proving my point. Nobody knew anything about it back, especially in the South. You can probably tell by my Seattle Mariners jersey, we moved a lot. So like in the Pacific Northwest for a while. Yeah, where I was in Virginia, nobody played soccer. Nobody knew what that was. Yeah.
Yeah, but he said we're all excited, and it's maybe there's a fervor at that time to be able to capture how good do you think U.S. soccer fans have been at growing the tent and expanding the sport over the decades and taking advantage of opportunities when the team when there's success?
I would say outstanding. I mean, because I remember the days of no professional soccer in the U.S., and not expecting the U.S. to qualify for the World Cup. And then eventually you have MLS, but half the games are played on fields with football lines in like a 90,000 capacity stadium with 6,000 people in it. And like, I remember all that really well. And now I live near the stadium here in DC. I go see DC United all the time. It's like a legit soccer experience, It's like good
Audi.
players and a real, Audi Field. There's a real stadium and stuff. And the national team, I mean, I was very upset with what just happened in the Nations League, and a lot of other people were. Same thing with Copa America last year when we didn't qualify in 2018. It's like a scandal. I mean, people care, and it's a completely different environment, and it's kind of what I dreamed would happen when I was a very lonely soccer fan back in the 90s. In the 90s, it was like you were. It was like a fetish or something. It was like some weird kink that you couldn't tell anybody about. And you didn't dare explain it to them because they judge you. But now it's completely mainstream. It's one of the sports. It's one of the ones.
You would only dare look it up on Reddit. And see if there are other people. There's no way you'd ask other people in person, "Wait, are you into soccer?"
Yeah. And if they were into soccer, you were like glad, but then you're like, yeah, but you must be some kind of weirdo. You like didn't trust them. Like, what have I done here? Starting a conversation with you.
This person's a little forthright.
Yeah.
Yeah. So United States has an opportunity here. They go up 1-0. Mexico has chances during the first half, but including I think Brad Friedel punches one right back to Borgetti. Fortunately, he gets a bad first touch on it, and that's like the main chance they have. And so, we have excitement to build off of. Hopefully, both the folks that taped and watched it, or maybe watched replay later that night, or see clips on Sports Center, are getting into this. Can the Dems take any lessons from efforts to grow the tent of American soccer, and are there successful or counterproductive sentiments in how to do it?
That's a good question. I hadn't really thought about it. I mean, let me think. Why did soccer grow in the? I think soccer grew because the product's good. It's fucking fun to watch the World Cup. It's fun. It's fun to have different sports. It is. I love being soccer and baseball are my main two. The other ones, sure, but soccer and baseball are the two I really follow closely. It's nice when one of your teams doing badly to jump ship to the other team. Have a different channel you can turn to. And so I'd say that's because the product's good. So maybe the Democrats' lesson there is like, have good ideas, run sane, normal people who support those good ideas, and it's probably going to end pretty well.
Yeah, and I also came to mind is something you said at a DC Improv live show recently.
Mm-hmm. We should let listeners know we met at the live show at the DC Improv a little while ago.
And someone asked something similar to coalition building, like a rule of thumb, and you said don't be annoying, which I think was actually pretty valuable piece of advice in coalition building. And so, do you think soccer fans at that time were being like exclusive and hip about it, or open, or it sounds like you feel like they found the right mixture?
They found the right mixture. Annoying soccer fan is 100% a thing.
Okay.
Absolutely. It was a big problem. And I feel like the annoying people that I ran into, and they're still around, but like they were thick on the ground in like the 90s and 2000s. But they were sort of like the second generation of annoying people, because my understanding of soccer during the 70s, during the NASL, when of course, Pele and Beckenbauer, we had one incredible team. Well, and to be fair, Johan Cruyff played for the Diplomats here in DC, but we had a couple bright stars, and then no middle class players. My understanding is that the attitude of soccer fans back then was, congratulations, America! This beautiful European sport has come here to save you from your bestial grunting games that you play right now, football and basketball. They're barbaric sports, but we have something better for you, and it's the future. You might as well embrace it now, and that's how it's going to be. I know that that's why a lot of people got turned off to soccer, because people came in with that attitude of it's a better sport. It's a European sport. That's never why I liked it. Like I said, it was the only sport I was good at, and it was I love the World Cup. There's just nothing like the World Cup. But when I was a younger soccer fan in the 90s and 2000s, yeah, there's definitely the type of person who it's just like a way to be pretentious, because as we were talking about, it's the thing that not many people were into. So it's like being into an obscure band or something like that. And then of course there's the American who does a semester abroad in Barcelona or something, and then they come back and they've got the scarf and they're just a Barca fan for life.
Why isn't every bar here open till 4 a.m.? What the heck?
Yeah, and it's
do it
just
wrong here.
Yeah, it's just a way to talk about everything America does wrong and how other places are better. Like, yeah, that's an asinine thing to do. Definitely, one of the reasons soccer's grown here is because now the people who watch it are, by and large, they're normal people, the same people who watch every other sport. It's here in DC. It's definitely a very like normal middle class thing. I'm not saying those annoying people aren't around, but like you go to a game, it's like families and stuff. It's normal folks.
Yeah, and I don't know how many people are tuning in right at 3:30 a.m. Eastern time live when the second half begins. Probably only the weirdos at this point, but
Yeah.
but people seeing the highlights. I don't know if we aired this a ton at Sports Center here or American local channels, but we get away with one and 55th.
Oh, the John O'Brien, the handball, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's a wake up. That seems to and U.S. responds quickly after that. They wake up a bit.
Sorry, can you? I think listeners want to hear what happened exactly there, because I remember my eyes were as wide as dinner plates. I couldn't believe what I just saw.
Yeah, the corner comes in and live. I guess John O'Brien and his mark both going up from the header, and the way it comes off, it seems like it could have been the result of hitting the head, but you see this replay and it comes off his arm.
Yeah, he's got his arm raised. And for people who don't remember this play, there is no question it hits his arm. It doesn't hit an arm; it hits his fist. He punches it. It's the hand of God. Like he punches it. Not called. No VAR back then, of course. I remember at the time talking myself into believing that it was incidental, because it was he was jumping up, the man next to him, it's like your arm kind of gets pushed up and maybe he punches it away. But I've seen that replay since then, and he did it on purpose. I think I maybe believed that it was accidental, just because why in God's name would you do that? And I remember Landon Donovan looking at him and I remember thinking, boy, I hope the ref doesn't see Landon looking at him, because that look Landon is giving him is incriminating. Because Landon saw it and gave him a look like, what did you just do there, man?
That sells him, but no VAR at the time.
Yeah.
And Landon capitalizes as Mexico gets more and more frustrated. They weren't happy about that. Altry, they weren't happy after the goal. The result, U.S. had a pretty quickly set free kick leading to the first goal, and so the Mexican team getting more and more frustrated, and the dam would sort of break for the motions after 65th minute. Landon Donovan header delivered pretty much perfectly by Eddie Lewis.
Yeah.
And it's 2-0. Seemed like Landon Donovan kind of had an interesting arc in the 2000s and also the 2010s. This was his first goal in the World Cup. 20 years old, he'd be named the best young player in the tournament. What was your journey with Landon Donovan's arc relative to what you felt like the public perceived?
I remember being so excited by him and DeMarcus Beasley in that World Cup, because those were two guys that like nobody was talking about 6 months before the tournament, and then they both came in and played a huge role. And I loved Landon Donovan. He was, especially against Mexico. My God, he was just a Mexico killer his entire career. And he and then Dempsey became players that, I really had faith in them showing up in big moments. I would say McBride was like that as well, but McBride was less dynamic than those two. So I loved Landon Donovan. Again, he and Beasley were the two big eye openers for me in that tournament. And you could, any tournament where things go well, you have guys show up who you maybe didn't expect a ton from them, and they play well. And like certainly Pablo Mastroianni was that guy, and I think John O'Brien, who was still very young at that point, was that guy. But Donovan and Beasley, and I remember, that goal. It was one of those goals that you see the ball coming in, and you're just like, he's going to score that. He's, while the ball's still in the air, like he's going to score that, and he did, and that's the moment that it really felt real. That's the moment that it felt like I think we could win this thing. I think before that, I had maybe been thinking, because you're right that Mexico put the pressure on at the end of the first half and into the second, and they should have had a penalty kick with the John O'Brien handball, which, by the way, wasn't necessary. It was like at the top of the box. It was not like an imminent header. To this day, I don't know why he did it, but they should have had a penalty kick. It felt like they were going to tie it up, and you're like, okay, 1-1, go to extra time, anything can happen. Penalty kicks, anything can happen. But then when Donovan scored that second goal, it was like, we're in the driver's seat now. I think we're going to win this.
Yeah, and it seemed like the style they set out to play from open was conducive to how it played out. It was a 3-5-2. Reyna usually midfield as wing back and absorb and counter. It seemed like it would work for holding a lead and help them punch in the second goal. Was there a style that you would have liked to see, maybe not this specific match, but at some point a type of style of play that you like to see the most, that you'd like to see Team USA adopt, that maybe another country at the World Cup over the past couple of decades has shown?
I don't know about now. I honestly don't know what to make of our team right now. We're like quite good on paper and quite shit on grass. Back in the day, this game was like the beginning of us really being a counter-attacking team, especially against Mexico. We were playing a 3-5-2. Bruce Arena will tell you is because everyone was hurt. We had no options. Tony Sané had pulled a hamstring, and Jeff Agus was he was not having a good tournament, and so it was very much by necessity. We completely countered, especially because we scored in the 7th minute. So then the dynamic became clear. We were going to sit and counter, and of course, this Donovan goal that shows up in the 65th minute is a classic counterattack goal. I loved it when we were a counterattacking team, and I think counterattacking is so underrated. And I feel that way largely because I am a U.S. national team fan and have been since, the 90s and 2000s, back when we were not the favorite against anybody.
Right.
And also because I'm a Fulham fan in the Premier League. So, Fulham there are 6 teams in the league that, like, you have no choice but to sit and counter. And then there are another 10 where you probably should sit and counter. I mean, Fulham's a bit of a bad example because the team they have right now can actually possess the ball. But most of the teams they've had in my life should be counterattacking teams. And I feel like Fulham has been most successful when they're a counterattacking team. And I feel like the United States back in the 2000s and early 2010s, because we were a counterattacking team under Bob Bradley as well, that worked. And it was when Jurgen Klinsmann came in and said, no, we're going to play the South American possession style, foot on the ball, pass it around, technical play. That's when it all went to shit. Yeah. That I think you got to match your style to the team that you have. So I would say my favorite style is the style that maximizes your results. And when we had a coach who was correctly assessing what we had and correctly assessing how we could win and how we could not, we got good results. So the right thing to do at that moment was to counterattack. People can call it that Landon Donovan goal. That's a counterattacking goal. And that's why we went up 2-0, and that's why we won that game. So I like whichever style works. And in that context, the style that worked was counterattack.
Yeah, and Mexico, tried to boost their tech coming out of halftime, bring in Luis El Matador Hernandez, and they have Blanco up top as well.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, US able to absorb and counter, but made for an exciting second half. And even after that 65th minute goal, we felt like they were. I think in normal history they said we thought they were feet behind, and then it felt like they were a mile behind. But still, Mexico had probably some would say maybe outplayed, or they definitely outpossessed. We'll just say that.
Outpossessed, yeah.
USA to that point, but then the wheels start falling off. When the US Team USA brings in Kobe Jones, and they just keep slide tackling him, and eventually Rafa Marquez, the 23-year-old captain, just a flying header kick, or headbutt and kick. I don't know how to describe that.
He threw everything he had at him, and because you're right, they went for a header, and it was kind of elbow, head, leg, anything he could put on Kobe Jones, he did in that moment.
Yeah, and Kobe Jones afterwards said like I smiled because I knew we'd sealed it, because that's a red card in the 88th minute.
Yes, and
yeah.
and also I think prepped U.S. soccer fans for the reality that this is how it was always going to go in the waning moments against Mexico when you're beating them, because that's how it always went for the next 10 years. Anytime we were beating them and the game was ending, you're going to get a couple red cards.
And so they get near the in extra time, or not extra time. Toward
time.
Yeah. And in stoppage time, Landon Donovan struggle or has a clear look, misses it there. It seemed like I was reading the Guardian live blog, and I don't know if it's because of 98 they get they get knocked out with the Beckham red card and burn him in effigy. And in 94 they don't qualify for when the USA hosts. I don't know if they're a little on edge.
You're talking about England, yeah.
Yeah, but the Guardian's live blog says that Jones's wing play is wasted when Donovan kicks less accurately than Norwood in a Super Bowl. So that American football reference is over 10 years old at that point. Did it seem like the Brits were furious about this? And you ever get a good-natured ribbing from British friends, or even from your boss in the 2010s, John Oliver?
No, John was always very careful to not rib American fans, which actually people would be surprised at, because that was kind of a character he played on the Daily Show. There was actually a piece where he went to a U.S. national team game, and I heard Stuart Holden was in it, and the joke was like the English guy is appalled at the very notion that Americans could play soccer. But that was a bit, and he was all like, John's very positive on the U.S., and he doesn't want to be the arrogant British guy who comes over and tells you everything you're doing wrong. He's critical sometimes, but of actions, which is fair, not of the country writ large. But no, he certainly doesn't want to he was never an asshole to me, and he knew that it's like what we had in common with soccer. And in fact, funny story, the first time I met him, it was at the DC Improv, where we were very recently. I was opening for him, and it happened to be the day that they had chosen Russia and Qatar. That day in 2011, they had chosen Russia and Qatar for the World Cup. So that is instantly what we started talking about. We were both mad about it because he wanted the U.S. to get it too. So yeah, John's orientation towards U.S. soccer is very pro, even though it is not the same as the orientation towards English soccer. English soccer is the only time, or English World Cup match is the only time the Last Week Tonight office does not operate. We got a break when England played.
Yeah, and unfortunately they qualify. They continue to qualify, and but it was weird looking back. And Mexico was banned from the 1990 World Cup, and England missed the World Cup where we hosted.
Yeah.
And then ever since then, after that, Mexico missed 1990. United States and Mexico fighting to, pretty much, a draw in, over the years. Uh, but I had
Sorry, can I say something real fast about that Guardian reference to Scott
yeah,
Norwood? It
yeah.
was 48 yards, Guardian. It wasn't a chip shot. It was 48 yards. I'm not the Buffalo Bills lawyer. I got no dog in that fight. But a 48-yard field goal is that's 40-60.
Yeah, I mean, and it was over 11 years prior at that point.
Yeah, it's a weird reference. It's a weird reference. Yeah.
Something a little more recent would have been great. But the United States moves on to the quarterfinal for the first time since the Great Depression, and
Mhm.
fall 1-0 against Germany.
Yeah.
I'm guessing it was probably house money feeling going in. But how did you
100%.
feel about how this would propel U.S. soccer, and how excited were you for the Germany game?
That was an extremely weird match because you're right. If you told me before that match, US plays really well, but we don't win. I was like, all right, well, I didn't think we were gonna win. And then we outplayed them.
Yeah.
And Oliver Kahn was absolutely standing on his head in that match. And of course, I guess this is karmic payback for the John O'Brien thing. Although I will point out we did beat Mexico 2-0, not 1-0. So even if you give him that penalty kick, it's 2-1. But that was a fucking handball on the line by Torsten Frings for Germany. If people want to call that play up, it was, future coach Greg Berhalter getting on the end of a corner kick. And then again, no VAR, but he moves his hand towards the ball and it sure as fuck hits him in the arm. And it should have been 1-1. And frankly, if Oliver Kahn hadn't played so goddamn well, that match could have been, 3-1 in our favor. But he really played well.
Yeah, an odd tournament where the keeper ends up getting golden ball,
Yeah.
going to Oliver Kahn. I'm not sure if that's happened in any other tournament there. And then
Yeah,
a-
he deserved it. He was real good.
great. Yeah, they get to the final, lose to eventual champ Brazil. But Claudio Reyna makes the all tournament team in the midfield alongside Rivaldo and Ronaldinho and Michael Ballack from Brazil and Germany. All around a great outing for the United States in the World Cup. The previous one, they'd scored, what was it, 0 points, 1 goal.
Yep.
They lose to Iran and
Lost
get
to Iran.
eliminated after those 2 games.
I don't want to talk about that.
This must have washed a bad taste out of the mouth a little bit.
You didn't. I came on the podcast to talk about 2002. You're going to bring up 1998. I don't want to talk about 98. And I don't want to talk about 2018. Those are the two that I just, nothing about it is good.
What about Landon Donovan's let's root for Mexico ad in 2018? People had different feelings about it.
I liked it because at the end of the day, it is sports. It is a joke. I mean, it's fun. It's the ad was he's making a joke, and it's reminding people like, sports hate is not the same as like actual hate. It's a sports rivalry. It gets awfully chippy with Mexico. That Marquez to this day, I don't like the guy.
He eliminates us for the 2018 qualifying.
Yeah,
he got his revenge.
And I didn't like him before that, but I mean, that's on us. Of course, they wouldn't have made it in 2014 if Aaron Johansson doesn't score a goal against Honduras in extra time. That sent them through. So karma should have paid us back. It didn't.
They owe us one.
It's their own fucking fault for losing to TNT in Costa Rica and a couple others. But it gets testy with it. You shouldn't throw urine at people, which some Mexican fans do. You shouldn't throw batteries at people, which some Mexican fans do. You shouldn't point a laser pointer in people's eyes, which some Mexican fans do. But for the most part, it's a sports rivalry and it's supposed to be fun. Blanco kind of did like the inverse Landon Donovan. Like he came here and played for Chicago, and it was kind of like, it's all sports. It's all supposed to be fun, folks. So I liked it. I liked making peace, and I the people who approach it as a sport it's fun and actually something that brings you together, even if you're rooting for other teams. Those people who are doing it right, is the ones throwing D-cell batteries that I can't get behind.
Yeah, rooting for your neighbor is a good thing. I don't know if you saw the Elite Eight and Sweet 16 games where you have two Big Ten teams, Michigan and Michigan State, go and play down in SEC country in Atlanta, and Ole Miss and Auburn. SEC schools root for each other, whereas Michigan and Michigan State fans root against each other. So whenever Michigan or Michigan State is playing, three fan bases are rooting against them.
I do the same thing in soccer, because it's good for the U.S. when CONCACAF looks good. I can't always bring myself to root for Mexico. I can root for Honduras. I can root for TNT. I can root for Costa Rica, because if those teams do well, it shows like we're playing real competition down here.
Yeah. Rising tide lifts all boats. With that 2018 ad, I think it's a nice sentiment from Landon Donovan there. You mentioned Greg Berhalter. He ends up helping promote the sport in the U.S. Goes on Letterman. At that 2002 The Landscape there. I think this is pre Kimmel and pre some other shows.
Yeah,
how much of that era of late night TV shape you?
Oh, a ton. Because I was, the era we're talking about, I was just out of college, and I watched late night every single night back then. Conan was my top one. You can't get to Conan without watching one of the other ones first, so I would watch Letterman. That was actually, it was great when you could go Daily Show, Letterman, Conan. That's an evening in the 2000s. That's like a good night in the 2000s. I watched it a ton, and was very much shaped by it. It was the only place you could get off the wall kind of edgy comedy. The stuff you were getting in prime time, I think it's easy for us to forget that it was, let's just say, family oriented. It was very family oriented because it was 8:00. But then when the late night stuff would roll around, that was your opportunity to get stuff that was edgy and fun. And I love the hell out of it. And I write a fair amount on my blog about how late night is it's just not going to be around much anymore. The shows are kind of dying one by one. Most of the shows, their host is going to be the last host. When Stephen Colbert Colbert might be one of the ones that sticks around. I think there's room for like a couple, 1, 2, maybe as many as 3. But for the most part, when Seth Meyers retires, I think he's the last host of late night, and that makes me kind of sad. I wish that was still part of my life.
Yeah, and to end on a more up, but yeah, I guess I don't know if it's uplifting, but and you write on Substack. Again, folks, check it out. Over 30,000. I'm becoming one of more than 30,000 subscribers.
I might be wrong.org.
I might be wrong.org. And do you feel like it actually is disruption in a medium, or you do political and comedy writing? Do you feel like it meets the need where perhaps some of the other previous forms or vehicles for that are kind of sunsetting a little bit?
It is good for comedy because you can write whatever you want, and I don't have an editor. Nobody can censor me. It's less like censorship, but when you're writing for a show, that's always your thoughts get filtered through, the rest of the writer's room and then the host. And that's just what that medium is. When you got a Substack, you can really get straight to the point. I can publish things. I'm what's sometimes called a heterodox liberal these days. I think it's just a liberal, but I don't want to get into all that. But sometimes I publish opinions that like you wouldn't see on Colbert or The Daily Show these days. Those can be frankly pretty doctrinaire. I don't have to be doctrinaire. I'm just some fucking guy. If people don't like what I write, they're free to not like it. But it's been going really well. Like you said, I got 33,000 people and it's a thing. I am surprised that it's worked so well, but maybe it's because I can just write with no filter and give my honest opinions about things and maybe write things that sometimes people didn't expect. So it's really good for that. I think Substack generally, the whole reason we know what it is, the whole reason we're talking about it is because here I'm going to say one of those, not doctrinaire things that, people on the left aren't necessarily supposed to say, but a lot of us on the left, we lost our minds in the late 2010s and early 2020s. And, sometimes called the Great Awakening. It's different names for it. But things went a little nuts, and a lot of that got in the mainstream media. And I've been a Washington Post and New York Times reader my entire adult life. And they were kind of shit in like 2020. There was just a lot of ideological crap that makes you think, what am I reading the left-wing version of Fox News? What the fuck is going on here? And they got so bad that people left to Substack. And this was also when there were all these ideological purges going on. Andrew Sullivan got purged in New York Mag, and Matt Iglesias got basically, I don't think he basically, because he's the boss, nobody can fire him, but he basically said to hell with this and left, I think is what happened there. And they went to Substack, and it became, because so many of the once reliable outlets had become a lot less reliable, Substack looked pretty damn appealing to a lot of people in that moment. So that's definitely how Substack got a beachhead. And now it's the one. It's like the place you go if you want to be an independent writer. I think the other outlets have kind of righted the ship a bit. They realize that they embarrassed themselves and they're kind of coming back around. But Substack is good to have there. I think it's keeping a lot of the mainstream media honest because they kind of understand if we become crap again, people will leave. There's a place they can go to.
And one more follow. Do you feel like it also can occupy some of the space that social media currently does in comedy and news consumption without necessarily having the same engagement drivers that can be counterproductive to good writing?
Yeah, well, it's very different from social media in that social media is heavily algorithmic. Substack, and I was lucky enough to have one of Substack's founders, Chris Best, on my podcast. In fact, I've had him on my podcast, and he's had me on his podcast. So I've talked to Chris a couple times, and they don't want to use algorithms. And in fact, I was kind of pushing. I was like, this could kind of be good for me if if the algorithm figures out what people like, and then they're like, you might like Jeff Maurer. Chris pushed back against it because his logic is he wants people to he doesn't want the algorithm narrowing the scope of what you see dramatically and quickly so that you quickly fall into a ideological tunnel where you are only seeing the things that align with how you already see the world. The way they want to do it is through recommendations, and for what it's worth, that's worked pretty well for me. I've got, it's like Nate Silver recommends me and Matt Iglesias recommends me. And those are those are extremely helpful to me because people find me because people like Matt and Nate are vouching for me. So that's how they like to do it. And that is a big difference from social media. And I also think that Substack, in my opinion, is a lot better for comedy than social media. I never liked what Twitter does to comedy. It's not the algorithm's fault. It's the character limit's fault. It just favors like super snarky, eye rolly, pithy responses, dunks and stuff like that, which like there's a place for that. That's one type of comedy, but that's like the only type of comedy that works on Twitter. TikTok, I see no format restrictions that should make it bad, but if I'm being honest, what I've gone on there, I don't use TikTok, but several times in my life, I've thought I should see what's going on here. It's just the dumbest shit I've seen in my life. Just nothing makes me laugh. I'm sure there are good people on TikTok, but I haven't found them. It's just like most of what I find is like mean humor and stuff that's so absurdist that it makes me think like, well, this person was clearly high when they made this. Substack to me is a much better medium for comedy because you can write and you can make it the length that it needs to be. And it's good for me because I'm words first. Even when I was a stand-up, I'm not much of a performer. I'm a writer. So it's a really good place for me. And now that it's got a beachhead, it's possible for people to find what you make.
Yeah, I mean, as a user, it feels less than other social media apps like or media apps like it's trying to push me onto like some sort of engagement hamster wheel or like
Yeah.
one of four different types of engagement hamster wheels. And thanks for coming on the show and talking about Dos Cero. Any excitements, reservations for us hosting the Cup with Mexico and Canada in 2026?
Lots of excitement. Yeah, the reservations. I don't care for this president that we have right now. I don't think that he is making the world better, and I don't think that he is making our relations with Canada and Mexico better either. I wouldn't want to hang out with us, so I don't blame them if they're a little miffed. I guess the good news is there's very little of that will probably touch the soccer. It's like we can just ignore that and play soccer, and that's good. So I'm looking forward to it. We didn't get a match in DC, but I'll find some way to get to one.